2018, I left powerlifting as my sole sport behind to pursue a more varied training style, hybrid training. Since then, I've taken on some pretty difficult challenges across a variety of disciplines and intensity. From a 500-pound back squat and sub 5-minute mile in the same day to a 475-kilometer double Ironman distance extreme triathlon and everything in between. I've learned a huge amount about what I'm truly capable of, as well as how to manipulate my training for specific goals without ever having to abandon any of the things that I enjoy. In 2024, I'm taking on my biggest, most difficult endurance challenge to date. I expect to fail, but I'm confident that I won't. In 2024, I'm running 250 kilometers in one go. Here we go again. Oh no. In simple terms, I take on things that scare me out of curiosity because I have found a huge amount of value on the other side of the things I've done in the past. With things like this, there's no real room for ego, which is why I have learned so much, not just as an athlete, but as an individual along the way, because I'm forced to ask myself questions that I otherwise wouldn't get the chance to ask myself. So let's get back in the deep end. Ultimately as well, in 2014, I started suffering with depression and kept completely silent about the way that I was struggling for the next almost 2 years. This was because I was so worried about being labeled a failure or as less of a man. And this actually came to a head in May of 2016, where I ultimately attempted suicide. Thankfully, I came out the other side of things alive and well, but it's something that I'm often forced to reflect upon. The biggest mistake I made along the way was suffering in silence, not being honest or open with myself or those around me. Since then, nothing has served as good as an example to me as how to approach things better as endurance events, because through the training demands and the actual event demands themselves, there's no way that you're gonna get to the start line, let alone the finish line, without tapping into the help, resource, and support of those around you. And the only way you can tap into that successfully is being open and honest with yourself first and foremost, but more importantly, open and honest with those around you so that you can find a way through the problems that are inevitably going to be presented along the way, as often happens with day-to-day life. The best example of this for me personally, and actually available on the channel here, is the Double Brutal Extreme Triathlon. In September last year, I took on a 7.6 kilometer swim, a 373 kilometer bike, and an 84.4k run with 8,200 meters of elevation total. A very long weekend, as it's better known. And there is no way I would have got to the start line, let alone the finish line, without being forced to confront the things that I was dealing with, being open and honest with those around me to find solutions, create better systems, create better plans, adapt, learn about the previous couple of weeks and make changes so that I could see it through. Whereas had I taken the previous attitude that I had from 2014 to 2016 of stubbornness, isolation, and thinking I could just tackle the world all by myself, I wouldn't have even made it through the first 6 weeks of training. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about these events, why I'm so passionate about bringing them to life on this channel, is because I know there is so much value to be found on the other side. Resilience isn't about just stubbornly egoing your way through things, but rather about being presented with a problem and calmly finding a way to provide a solution, whether that's for yourself or those around you. And the more often that we can willingly expose ourselves to adversity, the better we can train our resilience. Resilience is earned and is something that I have earned over the years through the things that I have exposed myself to across a variety of disciplines. And the best thing about resilience is that you can earn it too. So I'm going to get up my saved Strava file, which is titled Stupidity Supreme. Alliteration's always good, helps with the nervousness. But in short, this is a 250 kilometer run from Edinburgh, where we are sat right now in the office, just outside of the city centre, along to Glasgow, and then up the West Highland Way to the top of Ben Nevis, and back down into the Ben Nevis Inn for a very, very well-earned pint of Guinness, I would imagine. So in simple terms, 250k and 5,141 metres of elevation gain, with the simple brief being, this is not a stage race. I'm going to start from here, I'm going to finish at the bottom of Ben Nevis, and there are no planned stops along the way. It's simply a case of getting from A to B as quickly as I can and making sure that I don't fall apart along the way. And I think the most important thing about this to me is that the locations are meaningful, the journey is meaningful. Anyone that's been watching the channel for a while will know how much the Union Canal has been a part of my ultra endurance growth. That is just out there, that is just out the front of our office. And in a sadistic sort of way, I'm excited to tackle it again, even though I've said how much I hate it so many times, because it's been a huge part of my personal journey, it's been a huge part of this channel and the business's journey, and it feels quite symbolic to incorporate it. Then to go onto the West Highland Way, which is one of Scotland's most popular tourist destinations. It's normally tackled as a 5-day walking trail with some great stops along the way for people to immerse themselves in everything Scotland has to offer. But I'm going to be sort of missing out on those key components and just going at it at once. Then coming into Fort William, through Kinlochleven and up to the top of Ben Nevis. Iconic, highest mountain in Britain, something again that's very, very important to this channel. Johnny and I continually ascended and descended it for 11 days in November as part of Project Vertical, and raised just under £50,000 for November in doing so. That took my total fundraising for November to just over £100,000 as part of the fundraising that I've done for the personal struggles that I've had with my mental health and the awareness that I want to raise for suicide prevention along the way. So everything about this journey, everything about Scotland, everything about the distance, everything about the challenge, everything about the uncertainty is meaningful to me personally, and is something that I would like to really bring to life so that you can experience it with me. Whether that's in the training or the event itself, I want to document and share what the process is going to be like from start to finish. As, to summarise, I cover 251 kilometres from Edinburgh to the top of Ben Nevis and back down again, with 5,141 metres of elevation gain, covering a fair amount of Scotland in doing so. So that's that. Key detail, by the way, that I haven't actually mentioned, everyone, is that it's going to be in the last weekend of March, aiming to start on the Friday morning and finishing at some point on the Sunday. And as I've mentioned, there's no hotels booked in, and there won't be any booked in between now and then, so let's get to work. So obviously my training is going to look very different to the past 6 months, as I've had a real strength and speed focused summer. I've done a strongman competition, I've really focused on my top end mile and done a few other things along the way as well. I have enjoyed it, but I do have a proper itch to get back to the long stuff again. And with that comes an increase in volume. So as always, Johnny is going to be managing my programming for the most part. I'm going to be inputting into it and sort of sharing, scheduling, and sort of what's working from my perspective, as we do with all our clients and athletes at Omnia Performance. If anyone's interested, there is a link in the description down below. And do sign up to the mailing list, because there are going to be a lot of exciting ways that you can get involved in this project that aren't quite as horrible as running 250 kilometres from Edinburgh to Ben Nevis. But we're back. And I think the key point is to just break down what I expect my week to look like, subject to change, given that I'm going to need to see how I respond to the change in volume, change in stimulus. But the working template that we're looking towards at the moment is the same methodology as has always been the case with anything that I've been training for. Intensity peaks at the start of the week, volume peaks at the end, and they invert as the week goes on. So Monday is going to be heavy lower body and high intensity intervals in my legs. Tuesday is going to be heavy upper body and high intensity intervals, which will be a bit more Metcon-y, full body focused. Wednesday is going to be threshold work and strength endurance work, so something like a morning up in the Pentlands in the hills local to us, and then some carrying, sled work, stuff like that in the evening. Strength endurance, higher rep, continuous, almost more endurance style Metcon work in the evening. Thursday is going to be some full body work, again about an hour of just steady continuous work with some focused assistance work in there. Friday is going to be an Omnia special, a full body Friday, so for those of us that are currently running our programming, they will know all about these, but we are excited to announce that there will be a specific run of wintering medleys that will be getting placed into my programming, and then some of yours if you decide to join us, as there are lots of exciting ways to get involved. So sign up to that email list down below, and that's not the last time I'm going to mention that today. All right. So with Full Body Fridays out of the way, we're going to be accumulating some fatigue going into the long aerobic Saturdays. Always been a staple to all my training. It's just what the discipline is, whether it's on the bike, whether it's on my feet, whether it's in the water, depends on the goal that I'm working towards. Obviously, this is very running dominant, so that is going to be alternating with long road runs and long days out in the hills. So probably going to be going every 1 week on, 1 week off, road, hills, and then there'll be some Saturdays where I'll do road one day and then hills on the Sunday. But for the most part, Sundays are going to be rest for me, as they always are. I often get a lot psychologically from having a clear day in the calendar to just not worry about training. And there's no part of me that psychologically feels like I need to be training every day. I am very much looking forward to those Sundays. So a few big weekends along the way, a few exciting events along the way that will be documented here. But for the most part, that is what the training split is going to look like. Again, subject to change, but the fun part is going to be working through it and figuring out what's best. Well, I mean, the obvious one is it's a very, very long way. As with all ultra endurance events, there are a lot of variables that go into not just the training, but the event itself. And all we can do is manage those variables as best we can. You do that through training, planning, practicality, and all the things that go into it. But weather, unpredictable factors, geopolitics sometimes even can get in the way. And those are the things that you need to condition yourself to be able to bounce back from and deal with, which goes back to what I was saying earlier about resilience being something that you earn and develop, not just something you inherently have. So it's a long way, but I am actually confident in my ability to cover the distance. It's going to be the sleep deprivation, the self-doubt, the demand, and just the relentlessness of it that goes with the actual event itself, because it's going to be up to 48 hours without much, if any, sleep, constantly trying to keep moving forwards, dealing with the darkness. It's not going to be, I mean, in terms of daylight hours, it's not going to be amazing at the end of March. It's not going to be awful, but it's not going to be great by any means. So just dealing with that as a sort of cyclical process, but having experienced the double and done a sort of full weekend event before, I'm already better prepared than I was 2 years ago for this sort of event. So that's great to know. Training-wise, managing the workload, running 2 businesses, running this YouTube channel, running the podcast, looking after all of our athletes, making sure all employees that I manage are all sort of happy and engaged and focused and doing the right things, along with keeping Erin happy and keeping the household somewhat shipshape, will be the challenge. Because with the double last year, that's really what I struggled with, and I don't want to fall into the same trap of becoming unhealthy with the training goal being so dominant. Having this office, having this new space that, again, we've shared on videos recently, will be a huge component of that. But I am fearful of the process of making the training work, but also excited at the prospect of the things I will learn along the way, which I can then implement in the long term. So it's equally intimidating as it is exciting, because there's an opportunity that comes with it. Also, there's been a bit more people trying to sort of bait me and drag me into beef that I'm not interested in on the internet recently. So there will be people online that will be hoping that I fail and fall short on this. So maybe there's a few fears in terms of navigating that world a little bit as time develops, but that's not really something I concern myself much with, because again, with these events, the only question I ever ask myself is, have I done enough with the context and circumstances that I had available to me to be at the start line? And the answer will be yes, because I will do the work. I will make it work within the context and circumstances I have available to get to that start line. And if I don't feel like I can, I won't get to the start line. Simple as that. Whatever happens next is whatever happens next. I can't pretend that I can control the weather. I can't pretend that I'm not going to get rammed over by a horde of angry, croissant-fed deer, because the tourism up north has got a little bit out of control. But if that happens, it happens. Those are the things that I can't prepare for or train for specifically, but what I can do is train for and prepare myself physically and mentally to give it the best shot that I can. There are going to be some very exciting ways that other people can get involved as well. with that comes the sort of fear around the logistical considerations and practicality of making the most of that, because I'm really, really passionate about this project. The wintering as a whole is about building resilience, about how we can develop ourselves and come out the other side stronger, better individuals, athletes. And I want this project, from a personal point of view, to do that for me, but I also want this to be a bit of a mechanism and a vessel for lots of other people to have the same experience. There'll be more information on that coming very soon, so sign up to the mailing list in the description down below, please. That's the third and final time I'm going to mention it, but if you do that, you'll be up to speed on how you can get involved in everything going on, and we can all have a good time / bad time together, depending on how we view things. So with that in mind, welcome to the Wintering, Season 3. It's going to be a big one. I'm excited and nervous to bring it to life, but the bottom line is that resilience is earned, and the feeling I have in my stomach just filming this video now about how nervous and intimidated I am about putting this out there tells me that I'm doing the right thing. So let's see what happens.